Prince William, the man who has spent the past 18 months quietly dismantling every assumption about how the British monarchy transitions power, is about to do something that will be studied by constitutional historians for decades. He is using his grandmother's centenary, the 100th birthday of Queen Elizabeth II, the most symbolically charged royal occasion of 2026, to define, visibly and permanently, who belongs in the next era of the British crown and who does not. Not through speeches, not through leaked briefings, through the most powerful communication tool the monarchy possesses: positioning. Where people stand, where people sit, who appears in the frame and who has been edited out of it. And when you understand the specific decisions that have already been made about these centenary events, decisions that sources within the household confirm were driven directly by William's office, you will recognize that this is not a memorial. It is a manifesto. If you have not subscribed, do it now and activate notifications. Because what I am about to walk you through is not commentary. It is an institutional blueprint being executed in real time. Let me establish the landscape. Queen Elizabeth II would have turned 100 on the 21st of April 2026. Buckingham Palace has announced a comprehensive programme of events spanning 2 days. On the 20th, the King and Queen Camilla will visit the largest exhibition of the late Queen's wardrobe ever assembled. Over 300 personal items displayed at the King's Gallery. On the 21st, the actual centenary date, the royal family will gather at the British Museum to review the completed design for the Queen Elizabeth Memorial, a national monument designed by Lord Foster that will reshape St James's Park itself, featuring a translucent glass unity bridge and a family of gardens threaded through the landscape. Princess Anne will separately open the Queen Elizabeth II Garden in Regent's Park, a 2-acre sanctuary projected to deliver a 184% net gain in biodiversity. The day concludes with a Buckingham Palace reception, where the King will personally present centenary cards to fellow citizens turning 100 on the same date. Representatives from the late Queen's patronages will attend. Senior royals will be present. The Prime Minister will be there. On paper, this reads as a family tribute. Beautiful, appropriate, emotionally resonant. But beneath that surface, decisions have been made about who stands in those photographs, who enters those rooms, and whose presence defines the visual record of this milestone that tell a story the official program does not. Because this is the first major commemorative event since William began enforcing the working royals framework with formal, documented authority. And the centenary is where that framework meets its most consequential test. Not a Thursday ceremony at Windsor, not a routine garden party, but the 100th birthday of the woman whose very name is synonymous with the institution William is inheriting. The stakes could not be higher, and William knows it. Here is what you must understand about royal imagery. The British monarchy communicates through pictures more effectively than through any speech, any policy, any constitutional document. When the family stands on the Buckingham Palace balcony after trooping the colour, the nation does not hear words. It reads a photograph. Who is present? Who is absent? Who stands beside whom? Those images become the permanent historical record. They are reproduced in textbooks, in documentaries, in the visual shorthand through which generations of the public understand who matters within the institution. William learned this truth earlier than most royals because he experienced its inverse. He watched what happened when the wrong people appeared in those frames. He watched the damage caused when individuals who had no constitutional function occupied positions of visual prominence, creating the impression of influence they did not possess and the expectation of access they should never have been granted. He has resolved that the centenary photographs will be different. They will be curated with the same intentionality his grandmother brought to every public appearance she ever made. Nothing accidental, nothing left to chance, nothing that cannot be defended on institutional grounds. Sources within the household describe the planning dynamic for these events as unlike anything they have witnessed during Charles's reign. Normally, the sovereign's office takes the lead on commemorative occasions, with other households contributing in a supporting capacity. For the centenary, William's office has been operating as a co-equal planning authority, not merely advising, but actively shaping the guest architecture, the visual staging, and the participation framework. His team's position has been consistent and unambiguous. These events honour the late Queen's legacy, and the late Queen's legacy was a monarchy defined by discipline, protocol, and the absolute primacy of institutional function over personal connection. That principle has immediate, practical consequences. Because the question of who attends the centenary events is not abstract, it is specific. It involves names. It involves Camilla's extended family. It involves the Parker Bowles network. It involves individuals who, under the gradually loosened conventions of the past 3 years, have appeared at occasions that the working royals framework William is enforcing would not have permitted. And each of those individuals represents a test case. Admit them, and the framework means nothing. Exclude them, and the framework becomes doctrine. Let me put this in constitutional context so you grasp the magnitude. The Queen Elizabeth Memorial is not a family photograph on a mantelpiece. It is a national monument. The British Museum event where the design is being reviewed will include the Prime Minister, the Memorial Committee, the architect, the commissioned artists. The resulting photographs will be archived as part of the National Historical Record. Whoever appears in that room at that moment becomes, permanently and irrevocably, part of the visual narrative of how Britain chose to remember its longest reigning monarch. William's position, communicated through his team with characteristic clarity, is that the individuals in that room must reflect the institution the late Queen built, not the blended family dynamics of the current reign. That distinction sounds diplomatic. It is, in fact, devastating, because it draws a line between those who serve the crown and those who married into proximity to it. And on one side of that line stands Camilla's household. On the other stands the institution. Now, I want to be precise here, because precision matters. This is not about whether Camilla herself attends. She is the Queen Consort. Her presence at these events is constitutionally appropriate and personally meaningful. Nobody disputes that. The question is narrower and more revealing. Who accompanies her? What entourage surrounds her? Does the centenary become another occasion where the Parker Bowles orbit occupies space in the royal frame, or does it become the occasion where the frame is finally, definitively redrawn? The answer, based on what sources are communicating, is the latter. William has ensured that the centenary events operate under the strictest interpretation of the working royals' attendance protocol. That means titled, salaried, constitutionally recognised members of the royal family and individually invited dignitaries. It does not mean stepchildren. It does not mean extended family networks trading on a surname. It does not mean anyone whose claim to presence rests on a relationship rather than a function. This is, in institutional terms, the logical extension of the Maundy exclusion. But the centenary carries 10 times the symbolic weight, because this is not a Thursday in Windsor. This is the 100th birthday of Queen Elizabeth II, broadcast to the nation, photographed for history, attended by the Prime Minister. What William defines here, he defines permanently. The reaction from Camilla's side has been, according to those who have witnessed it, a study in controlled fury. Not public, not theatrical, but unmistakable. Because the centenary represents something Camilla understood intuitively from the day she married into the family. The opportunity to cement her branch of the dynasty within the visual canon of the monarchy. If Laura Lopez stands in the British Museum beside the memorial maquette, if Tom Parker Bowles appears in the Buckingham Palace reception photographs, those images endure. They become evidence that Camilla's world was woven into the institutional fabric. Remove them, and the fabric tells a different story. A story in which Camilla served with distinction, but her family remained, correctly and permanently, outside the frame. Charles's position in all this is the position Charles has occupied for the entirety of his son's institutional ascent, present but passive. He has not overruled William. He has not publicly endorsed him. He has allowed the planning to proceed, has received briefings, has made no move to alter the attendance framework his son's office has constructed. The silence is familiar. It is the same silence that met the Maundy exclusion. The same silence that met William's restructuring of the household staffing priorities. The same silence that permitted Princess Anne to align herself openly with William's enforcement posture without any correction from the sovereign's office. That pattern of silence is not weakness, it is strategy. Charles knows, as every constitutional monarch eventually learns, that the most important power a sovereign possesses is the power to not act, to allow the next generation to establish the terms of the reign that follows, to let the future write itself while maintaining the fiction that the present still governs. But here is where the centenary becomes something larger than a dispute over guest lists. William is not merely determining who stands in a photograph, he is establishing a template. Because every major royal occasion that follows, every state visit, every trooping the colour, every Christmas at Sandringham, every future coronation will be measured against the precedent set at the centenary. If the working royals framework holds here, at the most emotionally significant event of the year, it holds everywhere, permanently, without exception. And that means the centenary is not a battle. It is the end of the war, the final, decisive engagement, after which the terms of the new order are no longer negotiable. Princess Anne's role in this deserves specific attention. She is not merely supporting William, she is providing him with something no other member of the family can: institutional memory. Anne knew her mother's operating philosophy better than anyone alive. She understands, at a level that is instinctive rather than intellectual, what her mother would and would not have permitted. And her consistently communicated position is that Elizabeth would have maintained the same boundary William is drawing. The late Queen loved Camilla. She accepted her. She publicly endorsed her as future Queen Consort. But she never, not once, allowed Camilla's children to occupy institutional space at a formal royal occasion. That boundary existed for 70 years. William is not inventing a new rule. He is restoring the one his grandmother maintained and his father quietly allowed to erode. I want to pause here. I recognize that these events carry genuine emotional significance for everyone involved. Camilla lost a mother-in-law who, despite decades of personal anguish over the circumstances that brought them together, ultimately granted her acceptance and endorsement. That acceptance was not automatic. It was earned through years of service, discretion, and the kind of institutional loyalty that the late Queen valued above all else. For Camilla to witness her own family excluded from the commemoration of the woman who accepted her must carry personal pain that no institutional framework can fully account for. That pain is real. It deserves acknowledgement. But acknowledgement does not require capitulation. And William has evidently concluded that personal sympathy cannot override institutional principle when the stakes involve the permanent visual record of his grandmother's legacy. Here is what comes next. The centenary events unfold on the 20th and 21st of April. Within hours of those events concluding, the photographs will circulate globally. Every royal correspondent in the world will analyze who appeared and who did not. The composition of those images will be read correctly as a statement about the composition of the monarchy itself. William knows this. He has planned for this. The framework he has constructed is designed to produce exactly this reading: a monarchy defined by function, governed by protocol, and visually represented exclusively by those who serve the institution in a formal, recognized capacity. Camilla will respond. She always does. Her skill has never been in direct confrontation, but in narrative management, in the slow, patient construction of sympathetic coverage that reframes institutional decisions as personal slights. Expect features in the broadsheets within days of the centenary. Profiles of Laura Lopez, focusing on her quiet dignity, her reluctance to seek the spotlight, her love for her grandmother-in-law by marriage. Expect quotes from unnamed friends describing the exclusion as hurtful, unnecessary, a step too far. That coverage will be effective. It always is. But it will not change the photographs. And in the monarchy, the photographs are the only record that endures. So let me pose the question directly. Is William right to use his grandmother's centenary as the instrument for codifying the boundaries of the new reign? Or is there something uncomfortable about converting a memorial into a mechanism of institutional control? Those positions are not contradictory. History is full of moments where the honoring of the past simultaneously serves the ambitions of the future. The question is not whether William is doing both. He clearly is. The question is whether the institution is better served by a future king who imposes discipline even at moments of maximum emotional complexity, or whether that discipline, applied at this particular moment, reveals something about William's priorities that should concern us. Tell me what you think in the comments. I read every single one. If you have stayed through this entire analysis, you understand that the centenary is not an ending. It is a beginning. The visual template being established this week will govern every major royal occasion for the remainder of Charles's reign and the entirety of William's. Subscribe, hit the notification bell. The next video examines what William's team is planning for the Washington state visit, who travels with the King and Queen, and why one name conspicuously absent from the advanced delegation list has sent shockwaves through Camilla's circle. It is the most significant piece of diplomatic staging since the late Queen's final overseas engagement. Share this with everyone who follows this family, because 7 days from now, the photographs will speak for themselves. And once they are taken, nothing about them can be undone.